Go ahead, Joe.
SHASSHIBO.
Steve, I hate to tell you, but I think there's 12 of them.
Are there 12 of them, Susan? Holy crap. So this Dymaxion map of the Earth, with the South Pole down here and the North Pole up here, it folds into a cube. And here is, I have the moon over here, but I got the moon stuck in some kind of stellar thingy-mablop. It has a hole in it. There's the moon right there, which is the same shape as the Dymaxion Earth. This is the Dymaxion moon. And it's possible to insert these inside of each other in all sorts of miraculous ways. It's called.
And what is that, Steve?
What's that?
What is it that you're doing, inserting?
Yeah, I just took one of them, which I think this one's called tree.
What is it?
What?
With everything that we've been doing, what is it?
It's dynamic tetrahedra. I don't know, Manu, what is it?
It's a black hole.
Oh, it's a black hole. Very cool.
Your Earth is getting to a black hole and reappearing somewhere else. That's what it is.
This one is the ocean. And this one is trees. I can make this in, if you see the trees right here, I can make this into a cube that's trees.
But do you understand that the one that you have there expanded is a universe?
Yeah.
And then the moon is another universe, and that one is being swallowed by the first one?
Yeah.
You are on one side of it, you see it as swallowed.
Yeah, you can play all sorts of games with it.
It's a torus. It's going in and reappear somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and Shibo, since it's on the recording. And I'm going to go ahead and share this as kind of an introductory interlude, because this would be a great conversation for Jitterbug. But here is Shashibo shape-shifting boxes from Amazon. These are all ads. And see, it comes in a little box like this.
70% off. That looks good.
Yeah,
What?
I just actually found, yeah.
Oh, Shashibo. Best deal, 70% off, expires soon. Well.
Yeah, it's through it. And there are, the one I have is Blue Planet. I thought it was Moon or Sky or whatever.
Yeah, so evidently there's more of them than I like. But anyway, we started off with it. This would be great for Jitterbug, and then we could play these things.
It is Jitterbug. I mean,
it is Jitterbug in a way, isn't it? Except this starts with a cube and using the tetrahedra to build the cube. And what's interesting is you could put one of those, this cube, if I had one of these in a cube shape, it would go inside of this. This isn't there. You can put a cube inside of here. I mean, it's mind-boggling. Okay, that's a great introduction to Jitterbug and Bucky and on today's call. But now we're ready to start the call. So we're ready to go. This is Saturday, July 9th and 10th, depending on which side of the planet you're on. And how are you feeling? And what do you expect to get out of today's time?
Yeah, looking forward to our meeting as usual, and regretful I couldn't join last week. Yeah, I know I've missed a lot as well. But thank you for the introduction to that Shashibo. Yeah, I'll look into that. And today, it's I guess more of Bucky. Yeah, see what else he's gonna throw at us today. All right. And Susan, how do you feel, and what do you expect to take away today?
I feel incredibly grateful that I get to be here. I just slid in, still in work clothes, and having my first food of the day. So just really glad to be making it. I want to take away just the wonderful feeling of being connected with all of you and being in a space where we concentrate on mind and relationships. John, how are you feeling, and what would you like to get out of today?
I'm feeling great. I've been for a walk. And we've got some rain for a change, but I managed to dodge the rain. Grateful to be here, very grateful to be here. I won't be here next week. I'm going to be away with my wife and daughter and granddaughters down south in Dunsborough. And so I was glad to be able to get here today. Always enjoy learning more about Bucky, always leave feeling I've learned something. So I've got a large icosahedron Bucky's map of the Earth in the office framed. And I love these cubes that unfold and reveal more and more of Bucky. So, and I'd never heard of a Shishibo cube before, but very exciting. So, Manu, how do you feel and what do you hope to take out of today?
I feel happy. I feel grateful. I feel welcome also. And really what I've been down into is anti-entropy as a game of life. So I would like to get out of this more lessons of anti-entropic applications as to improve our lives and the lives of many. That really, it might be a high set goal, but that's what I expect to get from all of this meeting that we have. Thank you. Ajobin?
No.
So how do you feel? What do you expect?
Well, I was feeling tired until I got on the call, and then I got energy from everybody else. And the Shishibo actually has gotten me kind of, I've been pretty obsessed with this for the past few days, so I'm feeling okay. It's been a little distracting, but yeah, I too, I'm looking to continue to work through the text, Utopia and Oblivion, and you know, I'm just happy to be here with everybody. And it's I'm looking to learn, you know, to work learn a little bit more about being anti-entropic and what that exactly means and the implications of that as well. So Steve, how do you feel, and what are you looking to take away from today?
I'm feeling really good, and this is the weirdest shape I've ever seen.
I've
And
had that shape.
You've had that shape?
Yeah.
Totally weird. Okay. I'll tell you, I'm just really honored to be with a group of people who are willing to talk about the essence of being, I think, topology of being. You know, what did Bucky have to say? And right now we're tackling this book, Oblivion or Utopia, you know, design discipline. And it's about you and me. I like what Manu said about being anti-entropic. That's actually what we talked about last week, because Bucky talks about, in our reading last week, talks about how human beings are anti-entropic if we're doing our job, I think. I think that's what I got out of it anyway. And let's hope that there's more of that as we read tonight. And so I'm just really glad to be here. And I know we miss Kelly, and so sending blessings to Kelly. So John, if you're prepared, do you want to read? You feeling up to it tonight?
Happy to read, happy to read.
Okay, good. So we're gonna, there's the Shishibo. Here's our reading, and I'm gonna make it as big as possible. We left off on the yellow stuff, so we're gonna start with the white stuff. If we went back here, we would find the word anti-entropic on page 10. And I sent that recording out in the email invitation. I'm kind of combining the two. So I send out one email a week. It has the link for this meeting, and it has the recording on YouTube for the previous meeting. So if you look at your invitation for this week, you'll see the recording for last week. Okay, John, we're ready to go.
So I start with the white to effect a successful transition of world society to the new norm of man, as a physical and intellectual success can, and we hope will, be realized on spaceship Earth through the idealism of youth as implemented by the educational process revolution, which is beginning to take place around the planet. If so, the reality of the new norm of success will be progressively fortified by the incorruptibility of the cybernated participation of man in evolutionary transformations of human ecology and on a continuous instead of a short-term expediency basis. Can I just read that again?
Yeah, well, comments and questions, and let's read it again. And if we take this out of context, this was written in 1965.
Yeah.
I think it was published in 69. This was about the time that psycho-cybernetics came out. And people were talking about cyberneticizing the process of everything. In other words, computers were going to help people be more systems oriented, be more planet Earth, spaceship Earth oriented. And he talks about the educational system starting to change. And I just sent out to a couple people a Dr. Akoff video that Joe sent me about a month ago. And this is about from 1985. And this Dr. Akoff is talking about this same kind of revolution in education that I think Anne is actually doing what she can to implement. Bucky's talking about it in 1969. He assumed that Anne had already done her job 40 years ago and the earth has changed. So, this is what you're talking about. An educational revolution, I don't think it's happened yet. So let's read it again though. Shall we all read it again?
Yeah, he was 60 years at least ahead of his time.
Oh, yeah.
To effect the successful transition of world society to the new norm of man as a physical and intellectual success can, and we hope will, be realized on spaceship Earth through the idealism of youth as implemented by the educational process revolution, which is beginning to take place around the planet. If so, the reality of the new norm of success will be progressively fortified by the incorruptibility of the cybernated participation of man in evolutionary transformations of human ecology and on a continuous instead of a short-term expediency basis. Right.
So I think he's just talking about regenerative systems within that, and how we're going to transition to regenerative systems as opposed to looking at things that with a short-term mentality as something that is only going to be something that's useful for a short period of time. Yeah, cybernated participation.
Yeah, cybernated, I just looked it up. It's an actual word, and it means to control, parentheses, a manufacturing process, end parentheses, with a servo mechanism or, parentheses, of a process, end parentheses, to be controlled by a servo mechanism. So he's talking about, at one phase at least, a computerized, mechanized participation of human beings, man, in evolutionary transformation of human ecology. We haven't seen any transformations in evolutionary transformations in human ecology. We just see more CO2 in the air,
Right,
and more profit-driven stuff.
But Steve, I think that's kind of looking, I think it's there to be seen. Depends on what you subscribe to, because I think the education revolution is already in full swing. I care about wind turbines and solar possibilities, and just through YouTube, I'm not so great with lots of other things. I get educated by other people who are literally in that process doing it. I can find any book that pretty much has ever been printed and figure out how to get it sent to my door. I think I really do think that we are impacting some of these things, and it's easy because the news always puts us to the negative examples, but I think there's lots of positive out there.
Well, I had no idea at all about a development taking place in Queensland in Australia. It's a multi-billion-dollar international investment in green energy, a huge green energy hub. One of the problems we've got at the moment is the traditional grid coping with the huge amount of solar that's being fed back in by households in Australia, because over half the homes in Australia have got solar now. And so this hub has the largest battery storage in the Southern Hemisphere, one of only about 2 in the world. And it will produce energy from green sources and also cope with the excess solar energy fed back into the grid by households. It is sited so that it connects up to the high voltage grids and also to a submarine cable, which will allow energy to be sent out of Australia. So it's, you know, interesting to read about projects like that are green, embracing technology, high use of computerization.
Is there anywhere we could read more about that project?
I could scan and email, or yeah, probably scan and email the article.
That would be wonderful. Yeah, if possible.
Yeah.
I'd really like to learn about that.
Good. If you can send to everyone, John, do it. If not, just send it to me and I'll make sure everyone gets it.
I can send to everybody, yeah.
Good. You can send it to everybody. Good. I'm going to bring up one more thing in this. I think that Susan is an optimist, and I don't believe this educational revolution has occurred. I want to hear Anne talking about this.
I think it started though.
Well, I do think it started, but like this is 2022, and he wrote this back in 1965. And to me, as I look at this, he says that we're going to see this educational revolution instead of continuous short-term expediencies. And I think we're just working on these short-term expediencies. Anne, what do you think?
Okay, you're absolutely right. It's barely started. It started by pockets of people here and there, but nobody bringing everybody together. So that's the biggest problem of all. You have the Blue School in New York is one. I heard they teach math, sciences, everything using drama. Then you have the Waldorf. You have so many different brands, but most of them cannot be scaled. You can scale it, say in the US, like maybe they might have a number, but you can't scale it in Asia because the mentality of the people here is very different. So that right now there really isn't enough. And even right down all the way to the kindergarten level, because we started our own kindergarten, so I started looking into that. The philosophies are they're decades old. Some of them are more than 100 years old. And the worst part of it all in Asia is that we are using the Western concepts. And when it's brought over here, it doesn't quite fit in. And so people start to adjust it to fit it to the Asian context, which is fine. But the Asian context means more rote learning, more sitting down, more, like literally not moving where you're sitting for the kids. They're talking about kindergarten kids. And the rest of the kindergartens in Asia, I realized that there is no philosophy for early childhood coming out from Asia. And so what they did was they looked at what kids are supposed to do at primary level, which was to sit and do loads and loads of work, and they replicated all the way down to kindy. That is what it's like here. And it's not just Malaysia, it's all over. So we're part of I've been asked by Millennium Project to kind of hit the education thing, but I tell you, it's so hard because there are so many people with vested interest in what they're doing. That's the issue right there. Vested interest. Yeah. So,
Comments, questions?
Yeah. I hope that gives a bit of a,
It does.
The people who fight the hardest, they are anti-anthropic. They don't want to change. And you know who they are? The parents. They're the ones fighting to keep it the way it's been for hundreds of years.
They're also the ones passing their anxiety onto their children.
Yes. Last night, just last night, I was out for dinner with my Hong Kong partners. We were having a 3-week break, so they're going off. But then there's a Hong Kong parent who's here because he's not taking the kids back because of quarantine issues back. But they've still got 7 days of quarantine. It's not at home, it's in a hotel, and that costs an arm and a leg, right? So he's here with his kid. When I hear what they do, like the father is perpetually telling the kids that they're really bad at what they do. You know, they don't care if as long as he's in school, they don't care if the boys are failing. He doesn't think they're going to do much. I was sitting talking to him, one of the parents who came over, and he was telling me it's okay as long as the boys are in school. They're not doing well, but you know, literally the boys are not doing anything. And imagine they were in a Hong Kong school for years until they joined us last year. They would have been vilified in school, you know. So this is and Coco, my Hong Kong partner, was sharing with me. One of the parents the daughter's got COVID right now in KL, and the mom, and she's like early teens, right? The mom is asking Coco to put her in a hotel by herself for a couple of days until the relative can come and get her, right? So Coco said, no, you come over from Hong Kong and take care of your daughter, right? And she's got a bit of a learning issue, and the mom just doesn't want to have anything to do with her. This is Asia.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Utah's very far from it.
And again, I live a little bit of my life in podcasts, but people are talking so much. The people that I love listening to are talking about unschooling their children.
I've heard that. There's a big movement for that.
You know, to take them away from, you know, yes, you got to be able to read, write, and whatever, and pass state exams, but then how do you do that? And it takes very involved parenting. And I think we did some of that. My kids went to regular school, but most of their learning came at home.
Correct.
And we took them all kinds of places and really tried to, as much as possible, stoke their interests. Sorry, Susan, carry on. It's funny because he talks about, Bucky in his writing talks about the exuberance of the youth. And I would love to see that. I'd love to see that coming forth, because so many of the kids I see right now are championing. They're like having a competition to see who can be the most anxious, who has the most reasons for PTSD. The culture is, I'm finding individual examples, and I feel like my kids are individual examples. They all have issues. They'll all talk to me about them, but then they still go and do everything. So I hope the youth is going to lead by their enthusiasm.
Yes. So for what we have done, actually, which became a bit of a problem when parents look in, they think that our school has no discipline. And we figured a way to talk to the parents, and we tell them, what do you mean by discipline? And most times we make them realize they're looking for obedience and not self-discipline, you know, which is a whole other ball game altogether. Asian parents are looking for obedience, which they think is discipline. But we have a parent who a Malaysian parent. They lived in Hong Kong, and the kids are not homeschoolers, they're world schoolers. So there is a movement where people are taking their kids wherever they're going, and then putting them in local schools there and working with the schools. I mean, they select the schools though, the ones that are more progressive and more open. And then when they move again, then they take the kids to another country and they put them in public schools, you know. So they're called world schoolers. I was like, wow, that's new to me. Yeah. But yeah, our school is chaos central, because you use the energy of the kids, not suppress it. Yeah. So we train our teachers to harness the energy and channel it and keep it like most adults are scared of the energy. So you're talking.
That's true. Yep.
Scared of the kids' energy.
Yes, my wife was a teacher who was early childhood trained, and for many years did things that made many of her peers uncomfortable. For example, if the kids were hyper, she'd take them out and play sport with them or do things to provide an outlet for the energy. And then she went on, how many of you had experience with accelerated programs? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So for about 20 years, she worked with accelerated programs across Asia. She took Money and You and the Business School for Entrepreneurs into Taiwan and China, worked in Malaysia and Singapore. But yes, that's the sort of education we're talking about. You know, the old business school used to be a 16-day intensive. Anybody do that in the States? Business
What do
School
you
for Entrepreneurs?
want?
No,
Pardon?
I mean,
Yes.
not at a young age. I mean, there's the Montessori approach is the closest thing that I can think of. That would probably be as far as teaching entrepreneurship. But no, I mean, I think that the U.S. educational system is, I agree with Susan that most of your learning has to come at home. I do think technology augments it. And there is that element of it. But no, it's something that I think the worst part is that it's not geared towards kind of a holistic thinking. That's the biggest problem with the United States. It's not geared, it's geared towards a very mechanistic, specialized approach that Bucky actually talks about quite a bit. And it's, that's my personal opinion, is that it's a factory. It's a factory more times than not. So
Yeah, it's based on short-term profits, which I think that that Bucky just said in that last paragraph. This Dr. Akoff here, he talks about how the fact that the best teachers are the students, and he actually gives an example in Mexico where the second grade students were teaching the first grades and the third grades were teaching the second grades, and there was just massive learning going on in major ways. He really he talks about how the universities exist for one reason: to create a comfortable environment for the professors.
Yes.
That's all they exist for. And, you know, it isn't geared towards learning, it's geared towards maintaining the jobs of the teachers. And that's how our school system seems to be. So, wow. These two, honestly, this is the best 39 minutes you're ever going to spend, because this is where he identifies universities are just a place for teachers to be comfortable, you know, and this is a TED talk where there's a little repetition between the two, and there's an 8 series that I actually learned it from Joe.
yeah,
8 freaking series of just like hour and a half long, 8 times an hour and a half, where he goes into thought, what is thinking, what is problem solving. He's a Buckminster Fuller,
yes,
but he's an educator. Where and he talks about architects being the guys who are the system guys. And so he had to know Bucky. He had to know Bucky. Anyway, any other thoughts, comments, or questions? Okay, let's continue. We left off with instead of short-term expediency basis. Okay.
And it is not a matter of being a little more far-sighted and looking out for 1 or 2 more generations of man on Earth. It is a matter of making man on Earth a continuing success forever.
Comments, questions? Okay.
It may be assumed that scientific and humanistic literacy must and will be popularly developed at the earliest moment in order to spontaneously obtain scientifically generalized comprehension and systematically and conceptually formulated socio-technological answers to any and all moral, economic, aesthetic, and ethic questions, as well as objective answers regarding the relative harmonic desirability, feasibility, and economic practicality of any and all human preoccupations and capability commitments. That I wouldn't mind doing again.
May I point out that's 1 sentence. That paragraph is 1 sentence.
wow.
So, yeah, so please, let's break it up as we go. Go ahead, John.
Okay, so we assume that scientific and humanistic literacy must and will be popularly developed at the earliest moment. And by doing so,
Yeah.
we can spontaneously obtain scientifically generalized comprehension and systematically and conceptually formulated socio-technological answers to any and all moral, economic, aesthetic, and ethic questions.
Okay, let's
As
pause
well as-
there. If
Yeah,
we can
okay.
pause there, because he says this is something that Akoff talks about constantly, is systematic. In other words, a foot does not exist without a leg. A leg does not exist without a butt. A butt does not exist with, and so we're treating the foot. We're trying to solve the foot problem, but if we don't look at the whole system, we don't solve the problem. It has to be looked at systematically. And I think one of Bucky's favorite terms is this word conceptually. I think to him, conceptually and systematically are synonyms. What do you think about that?
Or
In Bucky's terminology, when he talks about a conceptual thing, he's talking about a systemic thing, a systematic thing. I don't know.
I think the two are not the same, but are
Work together well.
related, that you need both together.
Yeah, that's probably why he said
I'm
it.
gonna head into that right now with the humanistic literacy. And last night I was dead ass tired and I just needed a little bite of something to ease my mind before I went to sleep. And I ended up peeking at a Netflix documentary on feminism. I you know, and I went into my field and kind of just moved through it, even though I was a girl. Sometimes I found ways to make that my advantage. But I will tell you that as a Western white woman, I've had tremendous advantage. I think that there's different cultures and different religions that do not have humanistic literacy. They are willing to abjectly draw lines and treat at least women as chattel, as property. They are willing to, you know, kill homosexuals. I think when there's divisions, I just don't think that we have enough humanistic literacy right this moment. And it's a tragedy because you look at things just like poverty. Like if you could go into some of these societies and you could find a way to bring them clean water, they wouldn't have to take all the women in the village most of the day to haul water. And why did it ever make sense that that was put on a certain group and not others? So I think humanistic literacy is something that we have not yet achieved.
I certainly agree with you in some countries. If we think about the current experience of women in Afghanistan, they did make progress before the Taliban retook control, and now it appears to be a constant backward movement for women.
Or even I watched a documentary on the fundamentalist Mormon sect that lives at the Arizona-Utah border. They also subjugate women.
And yet, on the other hand, in Saudi Arabia at the moment, the Hajj is in place, and this year women are allowed to participate. So there are many women pilgrims.
Really? Wow, that's great.
I don't know. Saudi Arabia is still controversial because
yes,
legally they allow women to drive, but there are still social mores that say they can drive, but they have to be chaperoned by a man. I mean, there's still these, the socio-technological answers. There's this social problem along with the technology. Here's the car. You can drive a car, but in some countries you can't drive unless you're accompanied, because of it's compromised by some socio standard. So we have social technological answers that we formulated. Anyway, and now go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to cut you short. Finish first.
You did not cut me short. Go ahead. I was complete.
Okay. I think underneath this paragraph here is the notion of critical mass. When you read, it may be assumed that humanistic. So if there is notion of critical mass, then it begs the question, has that critical mass been achieved yet? Was Bucky being too optimistic with Utopia? Was an assumption. And then secondly, in regard to that, yes, education is answered not only on the children, but education by doing. If you take the case of Saudi Arabia, yes, yesterday they decided that women can drive, but they can be chaperoned. Until a time when women will be psychologically comfortable and everybody will see that a woman driving can drive, even trucks, then that will fall away. So it is a process, in my opinion. And when I look at the world today, for example, the technological advances and the behavioral advances are not in sync. Let's just take one of the latest, that is blockchain technology. What has it been made of? It's been made to be sucked into the speculative waves of things. That's what we see.
Yeah.
And then it sucks youth into this belief that is, I don't know how to sit with. And I don't know how. It will take a hard lesson from them to learn that there are cycles. So to me, the whole of that, I mean, and then I take with Susan's intervention in terms of women, feminism, we seem to forget that women were allowed to vote after the Second World War in the US.
What? Only after the Second World War in the US? Came much
Probably.
earlier than that.
Yeah,
Or
that's
between the two wars.
Yeah, between
Not
the-
older than that. It is
Yeah.
the 20th century.
Yeah.
That women were allowed to vote. It's not that old.
Yeah.
But yet, look at all the progress that has been made since they are allowed. You get my point?
Yeah.
The status quo system is forced to plant a seed. And that seed finds grounds and grows and then accelerates. In 60 years, in 80 years, women have achieved in the US what wasn't possible in centuries, in 200 years. So there has been an acceleration. Those are my 2 cents comments on the discuss.
And
Um,
go ahead.
Sorry, just to add something to what Manu just said. I was doing a talk for one of the banks, yeah, and so I pointed out in Malaysia, women only started having freedom to literally be who they are and what we want to be in the 1980s. That's my generation, right? The generation before were nurses, teachers, and secretaries. So I realized that my generation, around the 80s, things opened up and we can be literally who we are. And so it's only been 40 years, I mean, outside of the voting and so on, but it's only been 40 years that we've grown to the point where nobody bats an eyelid anymore if you're heading a company or you own one or you're charging and moving industries and so on and so forth. So it's only been 40 years. And yes, we have actually come a very, very long way. Just to add to that, yeah. I'm complete.
Thank you for putting me back into a pose of appreciation.
Oh, okay.
But see, I'm going, well, gee, Susan, why didn't you talk about the fact how most medical procedures are based on male physiology? I mean, you're an expert in that, right?
Expert. I wouldn't say expert. It's just how it's been done.
Yeah. And female physiology is considered an exception, and yet half the people on the earth are females, right?
More than.
Geez. So that's kind of weird. Cool. Do you want to continue reading? I kind of cut you off on the second reading. I think the blue is where we are, I think. Let's start wherever we are, John.
Okay. As well as objective answers regarding the relative harmonic desirability, feasibility, and economic practicality of any and all human preoccupations and capability commitments.
Yeah.
And I make a comment?
Go ahead.
Okay, we have forgotten a little bit about the word ecology. And Bucky is very, very much, as per what John just wrote now, about relationships. So if you look at it, it says, as well as objective answers regarding the relative harmonic desirability, feasibility, and economic practicality of any and all human preoccupation and capability commitment. How do they relate and interrelate? In those systems and processes for anti-entropic construct in order to regenerate. It means that ultimately, in actual fact, if we don't have in mind that Steve is subject to the human race, in other words, your effort to improve on your life should bed well with a general effort of, perpetuating humans. It's not going to work. And thus, where do you throw your net? What is your boundary? Is it short term? Is it long term? And what do you do in order to ensure that you reach those objectives that are very, very long term?
Cool. Comments, questions?
I'm just checking in on human ecology, right? The definition of it. So I need some thoughts on it, right? It's defined as the study of the interactions between human and non-human nature in different cultures. Human ecology combines the ideas and methods from several disciplines, including anthropology, sociology, biology, economic history, and archaeology. So when Bucky talks about it, anybody care to help with this? And they talk about between human and non-human nature, the interactions.
I just posted that definition. I found it and posted it, and so it's in the chat.
Okay, but what that's been the difficult part of what we've been doing. What are the applications, right?
Right.
We learn about all of this geometry, which is actually the observation and measure of relationship between system and subsystems. That's what we call geometry. And we apply it to life. What does it mean? What does it mean? The proximity of Manu to Susan, things like that. It is relationship and interrelationship that we're trying to define and quantify and use in systems to achieve teleologically far-reaching results in terms of improving what you call human condition. Not only its condition, but relationship to its environment. That is the difficulty.
Cool. In Anne's definition that she quoted, it says human and non-human nature in different cultures. So there's a sociological aspect to it, which is further explained in the second half of the definition, which says human ecology combines the ideas and methods from several disciplines. And of course, this book is design discipline. That's what we're reading, including anthropology, sociology, biology, economic history, and archaeology.
Our object that is all sociology, social. All of this is social. Meaning, how do different organisms act and interact in a certain finite medium? That's what it is.
I guess my question, or what I'm trying to figure out here is, I'm trying to fit this into the long statement that we just read.
That we just read.
Wrote, yes.
Okay, let's try to stick it in there. Anne, how do you want to stick it in there?
No, I'm just trying to figure out how, because he mentioned the human ecology earlier, right? In the paragraph before that. And then moving into this one, which talks about scientific and humanistic literacy and socio-technological. I don't know how they all come together. Yeah.
Well, human.
And I think it is in the last paragraph there, the last part of a sentence, when he says, as well as objective answers. That's what we're looking for regarding the relative harmonic. You get me? Harmonic is that minimum friction. That's what harmonic means. Desirability means that what we want. And feasibility and economic practicality of any and all human preoccupations and capabilities commitment. It is about what we're doing. We don't achieve for the wrong reason. We don't achieve anything for the wrong reason, but we do the right thing that we have to do for the right reasons. When I mean right reason is because we have been educated, we know. You know the consequences. For example, if you are setting up a business, if you know the consequences of the output of the system that you are putting there, then you can deal with it in a way that it sit well with the continuation of your business. Right? So it is necessarily a very longer term than just having outputs out in the market.
Okay.
I think that's what it means. And you can have that. That's superimposed like this, continue, like here, there, and then continue, and then continue, and then continue. It becomes regenerative. Because inbuilt in all of those things, there is a feedback for correction. But we always with the long range objective that we are going towards this, towards Veritas. So there will be, it's like going to the moon or going to Mars. You always have a tweaking here and there, but keeping the overall objective. So your trajectory is not going to be straight line. It's going to be zigzags, always. You get me? And in order to get the zigzag, you need to know how to do it. Otherwise, you're just going to be changing some variable that are going to throw your vehicle completely out of orbit.
Need generalized principles.
Yes. And that's, in my opinion, that's what it means. So we need to achieve a critical mass of thinking in that way. That's the objective of geometry and of education. It need not be just some individual that are eclectic and let's just say shiny. It needs to be something that is taking root, that is growing in there in a way that is killing the cancer that we have today in society.
Right on. And so socio-technological is definitely sociological, moral and aesthetic and ethic questions, those are sociological. And then all human preoccupations are certainly sociological. And he also mixes technology and economics, systems, and science with all that. Any other thoughts or questions before we finish this last paragraph on the page? Let's go for it, John.
John.
Yes, we must now ask, what will emancipate science from its century of unnecessary blind flying exclusively on instruments as a slave profession with lethal consequences and without any sense of long distance economic success objectives for all of posterity? We must also ask, from whence will come the tools of conceptuality which will emancipate science and permit its assumption of the prime social, direct, conscious, sensorial responsibility?
Wow.
Couple
So
of
it
important
needs to be
questions.
emancipated from a history of specialization, blind flying, exclusively on this instrument that measures that and that instrument. And then it also needs to be emancipated in order to just allow it to do whatever it wants to do.
Well, it doesn't have any sense of long distance economic success objectives for all of posterity.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, it is. Today, for example, we've been forced to again live moments that we thought were forgotten, but we were not learning from what else. If you look at in the 80s, there was this talk of war between the US and the Soviet Union, right?
Mm-hmm.
Each of them had the fusion bomb. Each of them could make it explode, but none of them knew how to use it for better way because it has the best output in terms of energy, isn't it? And we are
was fear of being killed rather than working to, we were more frightened of what we didn't want. We spent money to avoid what we didn't want rather than investing for what we did want.
Right.
Yes.
Bucky did
But
some
for what reason? If it's just stupid, because if it's the fear of being killed, you sure that if you start it, you're going to keep, because that's the way it was set up. Immediate response. If there was anything from one side towards the other side, it was immediate, the response. And then there was no way of stopping it. It was just going to be doom. All of it. So that effort is not intelligent, isn't it?
No, it's not intelligent, but it's still happening.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, in the 1980s, the world was spending, Bucky calculated about $1,000 billion a year on weapons and defense. And he did some calculations and worked out that we could solve most of the world's major issues. I think it was for just over a quarter of that. If we'd actually invested $250 billion a year in the 80s in dealing with reforestation, providing clean drinking water for every human being on the planet. There were a list of things that Bucky costed or had costed, and it was significantly less than we were spending on armaments and defence. But the money went to armaments and defence rather than to creating the world we wanted because of the part that fear plays. And that's being heightened, that fear
Yes, right now.
On the planet at the moment with the Ukraine, with other things that are happening around the world. we're back to the worst of the 80s. And in fact, beyond that, because we have Russia attempting to repeat what Hitler did.
Wow. Russia and
It's a
China.
scary word, scary word.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's a scary point in time.
Yeah.
And now NATO's putting a ton. They're putting a ton of money into their defense systems.
Hmm.
Okay, let's see here. I want to page down. So page down. There we go. Okay, we ready?
But in relation to the, let me just put one thought here. The Bretton Woods Agreement were never going to be sustained forever, isn't it? The world order at the offing of the Second World War, right? Were in Bretton Woods in 1944. And what you call the Pax Americana was not going to be, it was a held world together in peace, but it was never going to be sustainable. And we forgot about it, that we really need to work for real peace in the world, for more equity, for all of this. And that didn't happen. And we're surprised because the inequalities, I mean, you look at the Gini coefficient of the world, it's terrible. It is terrible. It is terrible. And people fail to understand that you cannot be at ease if there is something that is another phase going on, it will eat you. So you really need to be conscious of it, that it exists, and work towards kind of making it, I'm not going to use the word fair, but I will use it, the word fair. Because what is happening in the world is unacceptable. We didn't think, I mean, we spent time at war rather than thinking about what is the better world. And the way to do it is this education that we're talking about.
Mm.
And it will be really a great thing if a person that has levels of power or institution of level of power actually even understood 1/100th of what Bucky was talking about. Really, it will make a far better world.
Okay. Ready to move ahead?
Mm. Here's a good question. What can and will bring world society's leaders and world society itself to comprehend its economic potential and its essential function in universe, and to its successful performance of that function in time to permit the continuance in universe of the Earthian team of humans? That's it.
Good question.
I notice he didn't capitalize the word universe here.
I didn't read this, but it is really, I think that it says 100, 1,000 times better what I was struggling to express that just before.
Mm.
Shall we continue?
Yeah.
It seems to
We have an
me that
answer.
our commitment to mutual examination of our respective functioning leads abruptly to these fundamental questions. I assume this to be so. I also assume that neither of us has innate characteristics making us uniquely fitter than others to address these questions. I assume, however, that both of us have come independently to the realization of the tasks to be done by world society and by individual men operating with integrity on their own initiative on behalf of their fellow humans. I assume that both of us have now unique experiences and organised information and accredited effort, which provide us with some measurable degree of intellectual, technical, and economic advantage in addressing these prime questions. On my part, I would like to contribute the following thoughts. Now, that's a lot of assumptions there.
Yeah.
Can I just talk about, Bucky doesn't use word by mistake.
No.
Both of us has. It's not have.
Yes, I know I corrected that.
Yeah.
But it's not have, it's has.
Well, if it's each has, but both have, if I'm a grammarian, I've studied a little syntax.
So,
Yeah, but that's where I'm saying Bucky doesn't make mistakes like that. It is not.
so is
You
he-
that has there intentionally. It means your experience and my experience fuse now and acting as one. That's
Well,
the way I see it.
yeah.
Your experience and mine together acting to address world problem.
Yeah.
You've come independently. You've come independently to the conclusion. I've come independently to the conclusion. And both of us is now one.
Agreed. Let's continue. John, if you're ready.
First, it seems to me that unless we have experimentally demonstrable and scientifically definable meaning in our words, we cannot communicate effectively with words. Communication is with self as well as with others. Ergo, we may say the degree of effectiveness of communication is proportional to the degree of exactness of commonly accepted definition meanings of the words used. This statement is a corollary of my long-held working assumption that a problem adequately stated is a problem fundamentally ripe and potential of solution.
Yeah.
Reminds me what Susan often says, the importance of words.
Mm-hmm.
Einstein said, if you gave me an hour to solve a problem, and if I didn't solve it, you'd kill me. I'm paraphrasing. I would spend the first 55 minutes figuring out what the problem was. And I'd solve it in 5 minutes. If I clearly stated the problem, the answer is in the statement. But the problem, we don't usually state the problems. What's that, Manu?
I was just going to say that when I was in high school, my physics teacher used to give you 80% of a grade, 80%, if you have formulated your answer properly, meaning that in that context, you put the formula in place and did wrong on the application of substituting values for different variables to have an answer, and you had a wrong answer, it will give you 80% of a grade for the work done by putting together the formula for the answer. It means that if you understood the system, you formulated what the problem is, you have done 80% of work. And it rewards you for those 80%.
Well, you're able to do design at that point in time.
Yeah.
You're able to design a solution. That's
Yeah.
the most important part about that. So that you're understanding the principles. Yeah, you may not plug in the numbers correctly, but at least at a high level, you understand exactly what needs to be done.
Yeah, but the most important thing that I have from that is that you remember is systems. That formula was like a system, like
Right.
input, output, output. So when you learn, when the answer that you get deviates from what you expected, you are not going to question the system. You're going to look at the answer, at the input, and say the input maybe was incorrect. and correct the input. Otherwise you do it blindly. You might input something that is completely out of boundary, and it sends your answer hyperbolic instead of being gravitational. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Say, for example, there were two values that were at a denominator, but they were very close to each other, and they were subtracting each other. Now, if you put the wrong stuff, it may give you infinite, something that is not finite. All right? If the system was right. If instead of being minus, it was rather plus, that was additive rather than subtractive at the denominator, it will have a very, very different impact. Okay.
Okay.
Shall we be continuing or? Yeah.
Let's continue. John, wherever we are, go ahead.
We're up to potential of solution.
I think
In
so.
seeking definitive meaning, I recognize, of course, that Heisenberg's principle of indeterminism forestalls absolute exactness. However, the tolerance of error is reducible. Ergo, we may approach exactitude in progressive degree. Ergo, what I mean by mutual comprehension of meanings is statable only in terms of approximately exact meanings.
Wow.
Cool. Any comments or questions on that? I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah,
We're
it
human.
is.
We're human. It is also my working assumption that lacking the approximately exact meaning of the most profound generalized concepts, there is little meaning and approximately no direct teleologic effectiveness in any and all special case local experience communications. For instance, it is impossible to understand the previous sentence without a fundamental comprehension of the concept teleology. It is also fundamentally impossible for us to make conscious solution of the greatest and prime problems and their secondary technical challenges without use of the phenomenon teleology. It is my working assumption that the following 40 questions must be definitively answered before we may realistically discuss our respective philosophies and grand strategies.
Wow.
Okay.
You
so-
understand?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Teleology.
Yeah. Do you know the definition of teleology? Because I think I know it, but I always look it up when Bucky uses it.
Well, please help me, look it up.
In philosophy, the explanation of phenomena in terms of the purpose they serve rather than of the cause by which they arise. And
Okay.
in theology, teleology means the doctrine of design and purpose in the material world. So there's a theologic meaning and a philosophic meaning.
Okay. Let me put it this way. You know, we talk about expectations. Can you have expectation without understanding?
You can have them, but it's going to be meaningless.
Okay. So if you have expectations, then you can use your experience in a way that is directive towards, or that is gravitating towards an outcome, isn't it? Or towards your expectation. How will you build a probe to the moon if you didn't know about the laws of gravity
Yeah,
and
you could.
radiation and mechanic and trust and all these things, how will you?
You couldn't.
Yeah.
That's
It's only teleologically that Einstein could dream of relativity.
no,
It must be possible. And this is, I can see it, I can feel it, then I jump. And now, if it's possible, if I jump and I formulated it theoretically, it can be proven. And indeed, people set to do the approximation, the construct, all of the things that require, and there was a measurement of an eclipse that proved the special case of relativity, isn't it? Hello?
Yeah. Okay, are we ready to continue? I think we have, we can get some more in today.
Yep.
Page down.
But perhaps not the 40 questions.
Well,
what I
they're,
was
they're
thinking.
pretty simple. Let's see how many of them we can get.
Okay. Strategic questions. What do we mean by universe?
Cool.
Has man a function in universe? What is thinking? What are experiences? What are experiments? What is subjective? What is objective? What is apprehension? What is comprehension?
Shall we pause right there and make sure that seems to be digestible, right? We hear those all the time in Bucky's writings, right?
Yep.
Comments, questions? Okay, let's continue.
Well, really quickly, what is thinking? Could
Yeah.
that one I don't recall the
Yeah,
exact.
I'm writing a book on that.
Okay, I'll wait for the book then.
And
No,
Akerlof has some really amazing thoughts about what thinking is relative to problems.
right, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely does. Yes.
Akoff, Dr. Akoff. I keep trying to put an extra syllable.
So
Okay.
thinking is a mind phenomenon, not a brain phenomenon.
Yeah. I think Bucky talks about mind
Thinking,
and brain together in order to think.
thinking is marshalling radiation.
It's what? Could you say that again?
Thinking is marshalling radiation into focusing on to an objective.
And what marshals radiation? Gravity. So I radiate, I gravitate. I radiate, I gravitate. That is thinking. Yeah. Any other comments, questions? Let's continue, John.
Right.
10.
What is positive? Why? What is negative? Why? What is physical? What is metaphysical? What is synergy? What is energy? What is brain? What is intellect? What is science? What is a system? What is consciousness?
Go ahead, Joe.
No, I'm just thinking what is positive, what is negative, and I'm thinking about how that relates to objective and subjective.
Yeah.
But
And-
we've learned one thing that we learned from Bucky. Positive and negative will have no opinion.
Right.
is phases of a whole.
Yeah. That's why he asked why
Is
here.
duality. Duality has necessarily positive and negative. They coexist. We
Yeah.
have no business, no opinion onto it in terms of thinking, of loving or not loving. They
Yeah.
are because they are.
Right on.
That's Stoicism 101 right there.
Yeah. Okay, so we're up to 21, John.
Yep. What is subconscious? What is teleology? What is automation? What is a tool? What is industry? What is animate? What is inanimate?
Let's pause right
What-
there. Those links I put in the thing, Akoff goes into major definitions of thinking, problem solving, industry, tools, automation. He really gets into that whole process and how most of the time when people apply it, it's counterproductive. And
Right.
so Bucky's asking the critical questions here.
But have you noticed in all of this, the starting from the general and narrowing, you see that? What do we mean by universe? In all of this, dividing. And Bucky in operational, what is the name of the book?
Operating Manual Spaceship Earth.
Yes, it talks about the process, the scientific process. Say you start by dividing first universe into two, isn't it? And then two more. And I was thinking the other day, if you are doing it and you're part of the universe, and universe always think about things in the most economical way. And if it is by division, what is your first division that you do of anything? Do you divide? Let me put the question a different way. You have a choice between dividing in 2 equal parts, or in 3 equal parts, we even simplify it, or in 4 equal parts. Which one is the easiest? You have no experience before. You are looking at something, and somebody tells you divide in parts.
Right.
And you explain to him that what part is part of something. Let's just say we are seeing that. Which one, what is the easiest? Is it dividing by 2 or dividing by 3?
2.
Exactly. It's 2. You see how we operate as universe? We first divide into 2 equal because we have 2 eyes seeing things the fastest. And we will comprehend the first of parts that are similar in 2, divided the 2, the whole in 2. And that is the reason why derivation is always divided in 1/2, the 1/2 of something. But let's not go there. Let's continue. I just wanted to emphasize on this general, start with macro and then narrowing.
Well, and then he expands too. So like he starts out automation, then tool, then industry. I don't think that's necessarily in a divisory thing. Maybe it is. It might go in one direction or the other though. John,
The automation is more general than 2.
What?
Automation is more general than 2.
Yeah, automation though.
Yeah, it's more general than 2. A tool kind of, a tool is made for a specific task.
Right.
Automation is association of tasks.
And
Of many
industry,
tasks.
to me,
in a system.
industry and automation are more the same and tools kind of in between. It's hard to have industry without tools, and it's hard to have automation without tools. Both industry and automation are dependent on tools, so there's not necessarily a chromatic thing there, but I don't know.
What Becky called tool, word is a tool for you. The world is the first industrial tool.
Sure.
So the tool is more general than the industry. Okay. we
I
might
can
discuss
pick up a
that later on.
tool. I can pick up a tool, but I can't pick up an industry. But that's okay. John, do you want to continue?
Yes, what
Industry
are
might not
metabolics?
be outside yourself. Industry might be a trait.
Right.
What
can-
are metabolics?
Okay.
What is wealth? What is intuition? What are aesthetics? What is harmonic? What is prosaic? What are the senses? What are mathematics? What is structure? What is differentiation? What is integration? What is integrity? What is truth?
Wow.
Does truth exist?
Yes.
Yes, but it's always, we cannot embrace truth. We can kiss truth. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Because we are in the truth.
Okay.
We in veritas. So we can kiss it, but we can't embrace it.
I feel like I can embrace truth.
We can, you always pursue truth, see? Because the universe is eternally regenerative, presenting new cases, some of which might invalidate what you have recorded as part of your truth, of your consciousness. So there's always flux and reflux, always. But it's evolutive.
Cool. Do you want to continue reading, John, that last paragraph?
Yes. If we first accept mutually agreed upon, experimentally based definitions and answers to these questions as a priori to our dialogue, we may then also observe the following to be pertinent and useful to the initiation of our mutual search for the definitive answers to the immediately foregoing set of prime questions. First, I refer you to my attempts to make experience-founded, ergo, scientifically definitive answers to all 40 of the questions. Most of my attempts have been published in books, essays, and lectures. I do not assume that I have found the answers. I do assume that I have addressed the problems on a scientific basis.
Do we understand that?
No.
The 40 questions are a priori.
Okay.
There is a scientific method. That is our experience. We've addressed those in that way. He is saying he hasn't answered those questions definitively, but he says his experience so far validates those a priori and is enough for him to continue probing. It doesn't close the door to the fact that he might have to examine his assumption, his a priori. You get me?
I think,
I think
so.
so.
Well,
John,
the guy who was doing, let's say, discrimination about women, the guys were convinced that it's scientific, that's it. That was their a priori. But experience and experiments have invalidated that. You have to be obliged, if you really in that process of veritas, to be obliged to go back and examine your a priori's and answer that question differently. And build forth, incorporating on the basis of that new answer until it's invalidated. And that is what he says. Bucky says, anti-entropic ultimately is invalidated. That means destroyed by entropy. You remember that?
Yeah, and that actually frustrates me because he doesn't have syntropy and entropy on that list, and he doesn't have anti-entropy on the list.
No, our process is anti-entropy. That's what is the game of life.
I know. And anti-entropy cannot be sustained. It's a human endeavor.
No, it will be sustained to what it say human forever is that it will take a different form and life will continue. That's what it's saying.
He actually up above says that anti-entropic is human and is not sustainable. It's actually in this book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Over the long run, ultimately.
Over the long haul.
Ultimately, it is
Absolutely.
subjecting to the general principle.
Right on.
Anti-entropy is a generalized principle. There's a difference. Anti-entropy is a generalized principle. It's generalized application of general principle in the context to build something that looks like it's general.
Okay.
But entropy is general principle. We can't do anything about entropy. It exists because it exists. We can do something about anti-entropy.
Okay. I kind of get that actually. Okay, John, in order to finish the next sentence, we've got to start from here. And when you read that, I will hit the page down button and then you can finish that sentence if you can.
Okay. I do assume that I have addressed the problems on a scientific basis. For I have, as Eddington put it, made a sincere attempt to set in order the facts of experience. I have progressively included and refined the experience basis of those meanings and have progressively refined their verbalization. I have thus discovered, for instance, that there are no nouns, for physics has found no things, static, solid phenomena. Ergo, there are only verbs.
Beautiful.
Have you guys seen the book God is a Verb?
Who's that?
That's me. Hang on. For some reason, I hit the wrong button on my phone. I totally apologize.
They are only verbs. They are only relations.
Yeah.
They are only vectors. They are only edges.
I've heard people say that love is a verb. And if it's not a
Yes.
verb, it doesn't mean anything.
It is energy. There is only energy
That's
in
what I was
motion.
thinking.
And I have a book called God is a Verb.
He has a book called I Seem to Be a Verb.
And he has a book, I Seem to Be a Verb. Yeah.
Okay.
We're ready to go ahead.
Good. Though there are many special concepts which constantly reoccur in my day-to-day deliberations, I find that there are 14 which dominate. All of them overlap integratingly. Part of the content of one will of necessity often reappear under other concepts due to the synergetic interactions. I will group and discuss all the secondary concepts unique to my philosophy under the following 14 main concepts. And the dominant concepts are 1, universe, 2, humanity, 3, children, 4, teleology, 5, reform the environment, 6, general system theory, 7, industrialization, 8, design science, 9, world service industries, 10, ephemeralization and
Invisible.
there's something there, Steve, that you've got.
Steve, you got something up.
Ah,
Yeah,
that's
there
it.
you
and invisible Commonwealth. So ephemeralization and invisible Commonwealth, prime design initiative, self-disciplines, comprehensive coordination, world community and subcommunities of world man. Should be Hugh Being, but anyway.
Cool. So then we're going to be tackling those one at a time. And that will be our future discussion. So, Mano, how are you feeling and what's your takeaway today?
I feel that I've grown. I feel that I've learned a little bit, and that I understood a little bit than when we started. And I really still think that that is a way of tackling the why and the for what we are here. So until entropy to me is still the game of life. And I like the way it went from general to more and more things that are kind of immediately relevant. For instance, number 12 of the dominant subject there was self-disciplines. What are your self-disciplines? Self-disciplines, what do you do every day in life in order to be conscious, aware, active member of a community of humans? And I just think that that's what we're doing here. And I'm very grateful for all the contributions. And the women, really, 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 really punchy. Thank you all. Susan, how do you feel? What do you take away?
I'm feeling like I'm a little bit floating. Like I didn't get all the way through a cycle on these thoughts. I want to still stay in that positive energy, because I do think what you were talking about, Manu, with critical mass is important. And yeah, there's just so much about, I really want to be applying the design science. I want to be applying the questions and then the answers and the terms. And I love stable datum when you get to this moment and people actually agree on what it is they're trying to communicate. And that's a small little victory for me. But yeah, I've got more to pull out of what we went through today, and I wish I had more clarity. Joe, how are you feeling? What are you taking away?
I'm feeling fortunate to be here, and I too feel like I have grown a little bit since I've, our conversation. It makes me think about what Bucky was able to forecast in the future, and how he was able to address it. And I keep coming back to that because I think it's kind of understanding his approach as much as anything else, because he was able to pinpoint a lot of the problems that are ailing society. And I think that that's actually relates directly to what Manu was talking about, is that even with his high school teacher, of setting up the problem and understanding the problem to begin with. And I think that Utopian and Oblivion actually gives us insights to that specifically. So I really I appreciate that. I think that I was looking at the 40 questions, and if I had to answer all of them on an exam, I'd probably struggle a little bit. So I probably need to go back and review those. And so, especially in terms, in understanding it within Bucky terms as well. So I think that's he has a different way of maybe defining some of these things sometimes. So my takeaway is that I actually really need to I need to dig more into this text. I've really dug into spaceship manual, operating manual for Spaceship Earth, and I feel very comfortable with that. But I need to get as comfortable with Utopian and Oblivion as I do with the operating manual for Spaceship Earth, though. But again, I'm feeling very, very fortunate to be here. Anne, how do you feel, and what are you taking away from today?
Thank you, Joe. Okay, how I feel is okay. Imagine all the things that we understood before. We just toss all those words up into the air, and now they've fallen on the ground all over the place. That's exactly how I feel. But what I hope, what I'm looking forward to is actually to sort them all out over the next few weeks together with all of you over here, because I know once we get there, because then the links to what I got from before and together with this, I think it's gonna create even more light bulb moments, going off. So right now, no light bulbs, but thank you very much. Most grateful for that. And John, how do you feel and what is your takeaway today?
And I feel very glad to have been part of this morning. It's over 30 years since I was first introduced to Bucky, and I feel some frustration and concern that we appear to have made so little progress, starting with education. It's just one area which is quite critical, and yet we don't seem to have come a long way in 60 years. So that's frustrating and concerning. Repetition does lead to discovery. It's great to come back to things I've read or spoken about more than once before and think, there's another level there. Yes, there's so much that's so important in what we've covered this morning. That in itself, is weeks of work. And then how do we influence others around us? How do we increase the chances of what Bucky predicted, the prediction that we want coming to pass, that we do set up a sustainable long-term future for humanity? So, yeah, pretty important stuff. Glad to have been a part of it today. So, Susan, Steve? It's Steve's the last one?
Yeah, I think.
Steve,
yeah.
So what do you take out of, so how do you feel and what do you take out of today?
Well, I'm actually feeling pretty good. I'm excited to hear everybody's feedback on this. And I don't think there's an endeavor more profound than this journey to, as you said, John, do what we can to integrate these things and influence whatever others around us and institutions around us we can to get this conceptual or the earth as a system with each person being an integral part, that the validity and the significance of each person, that each person contributes and has to contribute. Otherwise there's no, somehow something will be missing. So I'm just really grateful. I stuck in the quote from page 9 about anti-entropy being eventually unsustainable. And I think that I'm real frustrated, as I said, that he didn't have entropy and syntropy on that list. And then there's no discussion of anti-entropy, which has taken me a year to figure out what it is. And I think Manu described it pretty well. So I'm grateful to be here and enjoy seeing all your participation. And I'm grateful for each of you. Thank you. And we'll see you next week.
I won't be here next week, so have fun.
Okay, John.
Thank you.
So,
See you in
have
2
fun
weeks.
too, John.
Sure.
See ya.
Take care. Bye.
Take care,
All right,
everyone.
everybody. Okay, Manu.
Hey, yeah, it was good.